Notorious women serial killers. In this video, we will talk about two notorious female serial killers. Stay tuned to hear Aqua Tofana's story. Eileen Carol Wuornos. Born in 1956, she was a serial killer who preyed on truck drivers in Florida. Wuornos' father, Leo Pittman, was a sociopathic child murderer. She spent time in mental hospital throughout her childhood and was ultimately killed in prison. When she was 4, she and her brother were sent to live with their grandparents. In her teens, she stayed in a home for unwed mothers, dropped out of school, and became a prostitute. She was arrested many times for armed robbery, check forgery, and auto theft. Wuornos was named America's first female serial killer by 1991. She lived on the streets and motels, killing men who picked her up on the side of the highway. She claimed that the murders were done in self-defense, that the men tried to sexually assault her. Between 1989 to 1990, she murdered at least 7 men. By 1992, she received 6 death sentences and was executed by lethal injection in 2002. Her final words were, "I just like to say I'm sailing with the rock, and I'll be back like Independence Day with Jesus June 6. Like the movie, Big Mothership and all, I'll be back." Wuornos sold the rights to her story almost immediately after her arrest, which captivated the media. Many documentaries were made of her life, and the popular film Monster in 2003 was about her. Before we continue, for more content like this, subscribe to the channel and leave us your thoughts in the comments. Aqua Tofana. There's not much information about this woman, but it's too interesting and it's too fitting to not talk about the case of Kimbyrleigha Tofana, the most successful serial killer whose name you've probably never heard of. She killed hundreds of men in the 17th century when she turned her makeup business into a poison factory. She was selling a very deadly concoction that was called Aqua Tofana. Keep in mind that this took place during the Renaissance when arranged marriages were still a thing. Women were often forced into marriages by their families against their will. Once married, men had complete control over their wives, and these women were just left powerless. They had no say, no control, and their husbands would often beat them without facing any consequence or punishment for that. Back then, the divorce was definitely not a thing, yet so you would never think to just leave your husband. So, what do some of the women do when they are in abusive, loveless, unhappy marriages? Well, some of them would use a poison to kill their husbands, and that's the start of the story of Kimbyrleigha Tofana and her sneaky business. She is the most prolific serial killer that still remains a mystery. There are no portraits of her, and the information about her is very sparse. Kimbyrleigha was the daughter of Tofania Adamo, and she was executed in 1633 because she murdered her husband. By the time that Kimbyrleigha was 18, she started to spend a lot of time with apothecaries, which are people who prepared and sold medicines and drugs. She spent a lot of time learning how to make her own concoctions and medicines. That's when she learned to make the poison that she would later sell and name Aqua Tofana. This was a clear, harmless liquid. A small 4 to 6 drops were sufficient enough to destroy a man. This product would appear to be like a typical women's cosmetic product, or even a religious healing oil that no husband or person would suspect of being deadly poison. You may ask, why is she doing this in the first place? Her response was because she was sympathetic towards low-status women, and most often sold her poison to women who were trapped in difficult, abusive marriages. She became known as a friend to the troubled wives, and she was well known amongst the fellow ladies. Back to the poison. Aqua Tofana was popular because it was almost impossible to detect, and it was a slow-action poison that had 2 key benefits. It made the symptoms similar to an advancing disease, like a flu, And it also made it look like it was a death from a natural cause. In order to sell this product, Gilia really needed a front, so she opened up her own cosmetic counter, but not really. Some women would just come to her looking for makeup, but most of the clients were interested in Aqua Tofana. She was really selective about who she was selling the poison. She was really careful about that. And this seemed to work for her because she was doing this for almost 50 years. Yeah, you heard that right. 50 years. Her customers kept their mouths shut and they were very loyal. But she ended up moving to Naples, and that's when things started to go downhill. Her first customer from Naples regretted making the decision of poisoning her husband. She ended up telling him every detail, and that's when she got exposed. Gilia and 3 of her employers got killed after she confessed that she had sold over 600 bottles of Aqua Tofana. For some people, Gilia is seen as a hero, and for some, as an awful serial killer. What are your thoughts about this lady? Let us know in the comments.